What I've done is hideous.
In our communities.
Sam left prison last summer.
Behind closed doors.
You're going to be our kind of eyes and ears on the ground.
All around the UK.
They're the most ostracised and most stigmatised of the group.
Sex offenders are being treated.
One of my crimes was against children.
Supported.
I will always see someone as a human being first.
And held accountable.
No one's making excuses for what you've done.
Sky News has been given unprecedented access to the work of Circles.
It's about preventing reoffending in the future.
A charity network of volunteers.
I want to do something meaningful.
Helping sex offenders.
Because I am still dangerous, and I have to manage myself.
With one ultimate aim, no more victims.
I'm supporting it, and I was raped.
Bill, you had a pad. Have you got a pad?
In an undisclosed location in the southwest.
How are we all?
A circle is setting up for the night.
Surviving.
A group of volunteers who meet weekly with a sex offender.
Just half a cup of tea for me.
They've been working with for over 6 months.
Hey, come in.
We can't film him, have changed his name and used an actor to disguise his voice.
Hey, Sam. Nice to see you. So, as it stands at the moment, in theory, you can't be in a room with...
A lone female, no. Because my crimes were against females and I understand that entirely. And it makes sense, which is why...
Well, I mean, we stick to that as well, don't we, in Circle?
Yeah,
so.
it's a bit like children. Okay, one of my crimes was against children, we know this, yeah, my first crime, right? I cannot, my licence states I cannot, unless it's in the course of everyday lawful life, i.e. walking down the street and a kid runs up to me and says, I've lost my mummy and daddy, in which case it would be, get the phone out, phone the police and get the policeman there as soon as humanly bloody possible, right? It's the same with females as well.
Sam served over 12 years in prison. The objective here is reintegration back into society.
You know, there's very few of us who really can thrive without some kind of social contact. And so my view about where we go now in the next part of the circle is about really challenging you to look at those areas that you've got of interest.
I think that you feel that you don't deserve that because of your offences.
Sort of.
So you try and remain super closed off to that.
What are your worries about joining social groups?
Numerous. Scared of rejection, scared of allowing myself to open up to the wrong person, scared of other people's judgments, scared of an awful lot of stuff, scared of myself as well. Because I am still dangerous, and I have to manage myself.
So he's your core member in the middle. On the outside, you've got your volunteers.
It works as a circle within a circle. Police and probation on the outside.
If you guys pass on risk information to us, which obviously you need to do, we would then pass it on immediately to police.
Volunteers on the inside, with over 600 active across England and Wales.
We get a lot of university students wanting to better their career, gauge where they want to go in the future as well, and a lot of people who just want to do good.
Their journey starts here.
So sex offenders need, victims need.
2 days of intensive training, where we meet two very different volunteers.
I heard about Circles when I was at university studying criminology.
I don't come from an academic background, it wasn't for that. I just wanted to do something that would help others.
I want to do it, but at the same time, how am I going to overcome the challenges if I hear something that is unsettling?
I know that they're most undesirable, and what they've done is a very serious criminal act.
You don't know how much you can deal with until you deal with it.
Often they don't have anyone to talk to about their offending or their current sexual thoughts.
The training covers everything from safeguarding
As that relationship develops, it's really important to remain risk aware.
to how to talk about sexual matters with a sex offender or core member, as they're called.
What sort of things might he have said, done, that made you think, oh, actually he might be struggling with some sexual thoughts?
Just maybe like keywords or lack of it, and just behaviour, okay, like you did the mumbles, like, oh, I don't want to talk about it.
What makes a good volunteer, would you say?
it's very powerful to have somebody involved who's actually just giving up their time because they believe in their capacity to change. Doing this work, it's not about making justifications or excuses for people or minimising what they've done or minimising the harm. It's about preventing reoffending in the future.
Sam, just, well, you said a minute ago that you are still dangerous, or you are dangerous. What do you mean by that?
I've committed offences, yeah. I've allowed things to happen, which means that, basically, well, I've got to manage myself to make sure that I don't go down the same paths again. I do not want to commit another offence.
What you've learnt to do since the offences is talk to people.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that, and yes, I would scream for help if any of my triggers came up, but I also want to manage myself to make sure those triggers don't come off. I've done an awful lot of damage to people. This is hard. You know, right, I don't deserve it. Never have done.
So you don't want to get too happy because you feel like that's a disservice?
At the end of the day, after what I've done, I don't deserve it. I'm going to rot in hell for what I've done.
To follow their journey, volunteers are keeping video diaries.
Hi and welcome to my video diary. This is my first one. My family now know. Obviously they did share some concerns, so like, why do I have to do it? Whether I can handle sitting across and listening to a registered sex offender. Well, I am concerned about it. I don't know if I can do it. I've never done it before.
I seem to be defending myself on why I'm doing this voluntary work, because every time I say sexual offenders, I get, you know, the bemused, stunned look, or why that group? They should be locked up. They don't deserve it. What about the victims? And you know, all valid points.
The timescale's critical because we've got a lot of core members that are assessed and waiting for a circle.
Daisy's a Circles coordinator in London with a probation background.
Hi Andy, are you well?
Fine, thank you.
Good to see you.
She helps recruit and assess potential volunteers.
Are there any types of core members or offence types that you wouldn't feel comfortable working with? Because sometimes, not everyone has any, but sometimes someone might.
I'm going to give you this. I don't know anything about it, so I can't tell you that.
Okay.
If you're ignorant of something, you won't know what you wouldn't and would know. But at the moment, I have no issue.
This particular core member has committed offences against adult women, so not against children, this one. So we need to make sure that there's a man in the circle, but actually there's going to be two.
I was surprised at what you said as well, that most of the offence were for children.
Maybe the majority would have committed offences against children, but they're the most probably socially excluded because they're the bottom of the
I get it.
bottom of the bottom, aren't they, in terms of society's views? So yeah, that's probably why we have slightly more of them.
A small town in the BC interior.
Before being brought to the UK by the Quakers, Circles originated in Canada in 1994.
Is this a community's worst nightmare? It doesn't have to be.
The first ever sex offender to take part was Charles Taylor, who'd committed over 20 crimes. He died in 2005 without ever reoffending.
Victims need support, they need someone to trust.
Circles UK set up in 2008 and it's grown. In 2016-17, 163 circles were completed successfully. Just 3 were discontinued due to sexual reoffending. That's 5%. In 2017-18, 180 circles were completed, with 9 discontinued, 17%. And for the first half of 2018-19, 87 circles were completed, 5 discontinued, or 4.5%. All new offences were less serious, with some rearrested as a result of volunteer information.
Circles very much target the high and very high risk people. In terms of people who commit sexual offences, the vast majority, about 90%, won't commit another sexual offence.
Professor Belinda Winder's been researching circles for the last couple of years. The key, she says, is to prevent isolation.
If reoffending is going to occur, reoffending occurs more quickly following leaving prison. So it starts to slow down the level of reoffending, even with a very high risk guy. So if you've stayed offence free for 5 years, you're highly likely to stay offence free, however high risk you were to start with. Actually, it's really important that we look at protecting people for that first year or so, which is why the circle comes in so handy as a stepping stone for people to try and get them to engage with society.
It was my first session. He wants to be there. The fact that he's there and he wants to make a difference and he wants to make himself a better person, okay? I think that itself, okay, deserves a modicum of, commendation for it. He doesn't have to be there. It's a voluntary thing for him as well.
We're starting to delve into a bit more of the life during and after the offence. We haven't spoken about the offence. It still feels too early for that, but we're making progress towards.
I had been a virgin, so a lot of control and power and decision making was taken from me.
Despite the charity sometimes struggling to recruit, some survivors of sexual abuse are putting themselves forward to volunteer.
I wasn't physically harmed, but it's a violent attack. That's going to stay with you.
Rachel was raped when she was in her late teens. She came across the charity a couple of years ago.
The focus is very much on the perpetrator, on the offender, which, as a survivor, my initial instinct was to balk from that and to turn away from that. But ultimately, circles are helping perpetrators to end abuse. That can't be wrong.
There'll probably be a lot of people out there who have probably may have been through what you've been through, who won't understand how you feel about this.
Absolutely. All I can say is that person is still a person, and I think everyone should have a chance to turn their life around and to redeem themselves.
Even offences against children.
Yeah, there's still, and I have children, and I'm thinking of them when I say this. I'm not not saying this lightly, but if you can help someone to stop that happening to more children, then absolutely, why would you not do that? Why would you not try to help someone?
If I'm supporting it and I was raped, well, what can someone who hasn't been raped, what can they say against that charity and the work that they do?
I think being able to talk about your feelings, as much as anything, has been the way for, or the opener up for you to sense a different direction, a different purpose in life. How do you respond to that?
It was through prison officer that I admitted other things that had happened in my life. Without going into too much detail, the abuses, just leave it at that, stuff like that. Which doesn't excuse what I've done. In fact, to be quite honest, it makes it worse because I was a victim and I've made other victims.
You've damaged people, but
Yeah,
that is not something that you necessarily are going to repeat.
Well, I've said this before. I said I'd never forgive the people that abused me, right? Because I can't forgive them, and I won't forgive myself.
And that's your right.
And I won't forgive myself either, because then I might become too comfortable and I might slip into old habits, and it ain't happening. I'd rather go back to prison than hurt another human being.
For each circle, a sex offender must be referred by probation and show remorse. This is Bill's third.
So how do you approach a core member then?
As a person. As a person. I think I'm much more concerned with the person now. The person now is not necessarily the person who offended who did the offending. And I don't think necessarily those who are drawn to it should be labelled just as do-gooders. They think there's something that's worth stirring in somebody else, and if they can contribute to that process, then that's the payback.
Oh,
there you
yay! I don't think I could do it personally because of the nature of the offence.
Becca works with several core members, and while volunteers share a Circle's phone, they'll never meet with an offender alone. For her boyfriend Ryan, it's taken time to fully comprehend.
We have a Circle's phone, so we don't give out our personal details to a core member.
Oh, good.
We're not on call immediately, unless it is an emergency.
What would they consider an emergency? Do they know?
If
they
they
talk about it at all?
If they think that they're going to reoffend, or they're concerned about the way they're thinking, or if they just seem to be heading in the same direction as they were before, it's kind of like alarm bells ringing.
If that happened, that's probably where I'd start to feel a bit more uncomfortable again, and like reconsider like what you're doing.
It's just kind of passing it on to the relevant people, get as much information as possible, and then pass it on to the relevant people, which is quite good for us.
At any time, the number of sex offenders waiting for a Circle in the UK is around 70.
To engage with sexual offenders rather than just pushing them to the margins of society.
Sky News has learned in England and Scotland, the number on the sex offenders register's risen by more than 10% in the last 3 years. In England and Wales, there's been a 29% rise in the number of reported sexual offences, but the number being charged has gone down in the last year by 6%.
Between 12 and 18 months, formal meetings stop, and you'll start meeting the core member in like different places like cafes.
We tackle very, very difficult problems that many people want nothing to do with.
Circles UK is supported by the Ministry of Justice, among others, but is having a large part of its funding cut. The charity claims that may create more victims.
You can't translate a couple of £1,000 for an intervention and compare that to the lifelong damage that victims and survivors carry. And it doesn't mean we justify the actions of people. We are very, very aware of the damage that sexual abuse does to the victims and survivors. And we make it very clear to the people we work with that we don't compromise on that.
At least for 1 hour a week, he gets to go out the house and have someone to talk to, and there's me and the other volunteers. So if you want to, and I hope that, I hope that kind of makes a difference for him. I know it's not grand, I know it's not life-changing, but, small steps.
If I can balance the needs of the core member to the needs of sort of public protection, which I am, or I believe that I am by volunteering, I've done good, and I can handle when people question me about it or disagree with what I'm doing. I'm proud.
For sex offenders, disclosure in everyday life is often one of their biggest challenges.
If the attitudes are, shall we, say anti, which is most people and it's understandable, then obviously I can't disclose to that person.
You never feel of it as like a remote personal attack on you, or...
No, because again, it's understandable. Like, what I've done is hideous.
And we all agree with that, but that's not you.
It's not me now, but it was me then.
Now, what's the difference?
Well, the difference now is that I was a warped human being at the end of the day. Right, let's be honest about it, right? To do what I did, and there is no excuse for what I did, right?
Might there be reasons?
Don't get me wrong, I mean, we could go into learned behaviour, we could go into that, what I saw in my formative years, but we are not going to, because at the end of the day I was a grown adult and I made my own decisions, and at the end of the day I knew it was wrong.
And how are you doing anyway?
I'm alright.
A Circle lasts between 12 and 18 months. Andy and Becca are now 5 months in.
I felt slightly guilty at the fact that I'm just getting along with them. Like, I don't know, I feel like I should be feeling kind of, not angry, but sometimes I need to remind myself what they have done.
Their experiences are typical. Progress can be slow and frustrating.
They don't want to talk about the offence.
Not really, I've not.
My core member, he skirts at it, but he doesn't go into it, and then
Ours won't even talk about it. He'll talk about what it was like in prison. There have been times where I've been really tempted to quit. I don't know, sometimes it's got on top of me.
What would you say to people who don't believe that someone such as yourself who has committed such serious offences can be rehabilitated or change?
Okay, I'm not saying that I'm a model human being, I'm not saying that I'm a model reformed person, but I'm not, it's still a process. All I can say is I'm doing my damnedest to make sure that I don't hurt anybody ever again.
And are you confident at this stage in your circles that you wouldn't reoffend?
Yes. But in my heart of hearts, I know I will never reoffend again, and one of the reasons for it is because of this. Because they have helped me to see that there is an alternative life, there is an alternative way of thinking, there is an alternative way of being. I would trust any one of these with my life. In fact, I pretty much do, because they know everything about me, and people have been killed for what I've done back in the community.
We're not friends with the core member. We can be friendly and polite, but in no way are we friends.
It's a fine balance between assisting and challenging a sex offender.
That is why we call circles of support and accountability.
Charity work that will be to many a moral dilemma.
Some people would consider me worse than a murderer. In some ways, I've murdered people, emotionally.
Helping some of the country's highest risk sex offenders.
We can't keep people in prison and throw the key away, even though many people would prefer that.
But with the victim at their core,
it's not letting people off the hook, it's not saying that what's happened is okay.
And public safety their aim.
I'm not going to cure the guy, but at least I can prevent, hopefully reduce this risk of reoffending.
Those resilient enough to take it on.
You are helping prevent further victims just by going to a meeting once a week for an hour and just talking.
May provide one possible answer to preventing reoffending, rooted in our communities.